Okay, so just first of all, if everyone can mute, I know we have this problem sometimes, but if everyone can mute, that'd be awesome. So here we go. Welcome everyone to season 5 of Feist, Female Entrepreneurs in Small Towns. I am so excited to have all of you with us. I know typically we're in a room together. The world is very different these days, but I'm so grateful for have the opportunity for us to do this. I'd like to introduce some of the incredible people that we have with us tonight so that you can actually see what's going on. So first of all, we have Chris, and Chris is our live captioner for the night. She has done captions for CCS, that too, CCS on BNN Bloomberg, The Agenda with Steve Packin, and for the card events and with other various clients. So Chris, we are absolutely honored to have you with us, closed captioning on the bottom. Hello, Barbara, welcome. We also have Courtney. Courtney is with us and she will be providing her services as an interpreter tonight. So thank you so much, Courtney, to be with us. We're so excited. Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge that Feist and the speakers here tonight. To begin, we just want to acknowledge that Feist is situated as well as our speakers on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. We are grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. So for all of you, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We have a really special guest, and this is someone that I feel so honored to work with. She's been a mentor, she's someone that inspires me, and she's done a lot of incredible work, and it's kind of an amazing opportunity to have Julia Krolik with us. So I'm not gonna read out her bio, I'm gonna let her take the podium here and introduce herself and the incredible work that she does, and to give a little background before we jump into the Q&A.
Amazing. Thank you so much for organizing this, Claire, and for asking me to be a part of this amazing event. And thank you also to everyone for coming and joining. And of course, thank you for making this event accessible as you can. That's really wonderful, and I really appreciate that. So I guess a little bit about me to get things started. And I'll dive in a little bit more as we go, I'm sure. But just briefly, right now, I have a company called Pixels and Plans that I run, which is kind of like Mad Men for research and science, I guess. We do a lot of different creative strategy, and we build different tools to help NGOs and government organizations get the research out, as well as doing a lot of workshops and teaching them and enabling and empowering them. And then I also founded a nonprofit called Art to Science, and I'll probably have a chance to talk about that a little bit more later, so I'm not going to get into that right now. And I also sit on the board of a fairly new nonprofit called the Data Visualization Society. So those are the 3 things that I am up to now. And yeah, I'm formally, I guess, an information designer would be the title that I have.
Awesome. And a lot of us are probably like, well, what does that look like? So we're going to break it down a little bit here. And first I want to say that Julia has an incredible career in the fact that she is able to combine science, design, and art into her career. And a lot of people, think, how is this possible? How can you do this? So Julia, if you can give us a little insight, how have you, first of all, if you can look at each, discipline or area, how have you brought all these incredible disciplines into one?
Yeah, definitely. I get this question a little bit from folks that kind of look it up and kind of say, well, how did you combine these disciplines? Because formally, I suppose they're quite siloed in education wise. So it's one of these things where I'm finding that the journey, I'm sort of just trying to figure out how to meet the person there. So, I mean, at the beginning, I grew up in Russia, and when my mom and I came to Canada, we came as refugees. And it was interesting because this classic immigrant dream, and maybe some of you have had parents or experiences with this, was to kind of if you're the child of immigrants, you have this weight on your shoulders to be this great thing in this new country, or at least I did. And so my mom, she kind of did this, you have to be a scientist. And so I couldn't actually do anything creative, or at least not, I wasn't encouraged to, like, I think it would have been great to like do a graphic design degree or a studio art degree, but that was not going to happen in my career path, because I had this like strong duty to do something scientific, which I think is actually interesting because it's International Women in Science Day today, according to the UN. And so acknowledging that, I think, is important, because I'm definitely one of those women in science, because that is what my career path kind of turned into at first. So I had a formal education in sciences at the grad level, and kind of really found myself working as a public servant for Public Health Ontario, and I was doing water quality research work there. But while that was happening, when I was doing my microbiology placement before I got that government job, I remember seeing this beautiful image of tuberculosis. And it was really striking to me because on one end, it was something that was scientific and it had, patient implications and all of those kinds of things. But on the other side, it was beautiful. And I realized that I had such a position of privilege in being able to witness that. And there was something about wanting to share that and get it out, and kind of finding a medium and how in a way that I could do that. And I think that was my first like aha moment in thinking about science art or science communication, or blending those two, because I knew that I wanted to break down that barrier and let people see it. So the very first steps into art came from, I returned to Kingston and I asked St. Lawrence College if I could borrow their microbiology lab, because I was trained in microbiology and I thought no one's using it for the summer, so can I have it? And it was amazing. They let me have the lab, and I spent 2 months collecting soil samples from everywhere in Kingston. So, like the JDUC steps at the school and the Wolf Island Ferry and Market Square and everywhere where people go and visit and exist, I took soil samples and I grew up the bacteria. And what was really amazing for me is, in the scientific method, I'm so used to working with stains and doing things that are very like rigorous, because you want reproducible results, obviously. But doing this creatively allowed me the liberty to kind of like treat the staining method as a paint, and the bacteria as a medium. And that was so cool to be able to explore that artistically. And then I approached the local gallery here, Union Gallery, who at the time was run by Jocelyn Purdy, the artistic creative director there and the curator. And I had no artistic background at all, right, formally. So I just had like all my science stuff. And I remember approaching her and saying, look, I have this art show, I have a vision for this. I really think people will connect with it, but I don't have like the credentials to do this. Can I still submit, or it would like just be wasting my time and your time? And she said, no, submit it. You never know. And so I had my first solo show. I guess this would have been 2009, 2010, as an actual exhibiting artist. And I presented this work in Kingston. And then since then, I mean, it's been presented in so many different ways. I don't want to get into that side of it, but it was really amazing to kind of take that first step into the art world, because I've had many art exhibitions since then, but that was the first kind of step on this path of diverging from being a scientist to then becoming an artist. And then around this time in 2008, the year before, I actually won the Summer Company Award, which I know Claire can tell everybody more about. I know she's, works with KEDCO often, and I know they offer this. And mine was in a different city because I didn't live in Kingston at the time. But it was an amazing opportunity for me to have some funding and some teaching opportunities about business, and kind of really get involved in becoming an entrepreneur and having a business. Now, my business was in jewelry making, and to me, this was still a hobby, because at the time, science was my career. And any creative thing was a hobby. So it wasn't like I could think about it professionally. But during that summer, I, vended stuff at festivals, and that's where I learned graphic design. I asked my best friend's partner had all of the creative suite stuff, and he showed me how to use it and enabled me to have access to that. And that's when I took my first design steps back then, and I kind of continued ever since. And so, circling all of this back into this one ecosystem, what ended up happening was, at my job in public health, I noticed that it was so like centered around the science behind what I was doing, and some communication in forms of scientific publications, that it came a point where, like, depending on who you saw me on the street with in our town, somebody would say, "Hi, this is my friend Julia. She does microbiology stuff. She's a scientist." And then if it was someone else out of my, circle, it would be like, "Hi, this is Julia. She does this like cool science art. She's an artist." And what I realized is I was kind of like this one entity with one CV on one end, and this other being with another CV on another end. And I wondered if there was a way that I could kind of just be one human being with all of these skills. And when I reflected on that, I knew that there was really no like job for me to go out and get, where the criteria in the job search would say that I would have to be like an amazing analyst and like really rigorous in scientific methodology and have all of that training, and then have all of this like exhibiting artist stuff behind me and understanding that landscape, and then have all of this like graphic design stuff. Like where would I do that? So going right back to, I guess, those entrepreneurial roots, and having a little bit of background in it from summer company, it was really kind of neat to say, okay, well, I think I'm going to maybe take the steps and do my own thing and combine these. So so that was kind of that was the path from science and exploring art and exploring design. And I think the final thing I would say about it is, while I was in high school in Ottawa, and I think this is a huge piece, of course, in Ottawa, there's the National Art Gallery, and on Thursdays from 5 to 8, every Thursday, it was free admission. And so during my high school years, I went like almost every Thursday, because no one could stop me from going on my own time and giving myself the art education that I wasn't allowed to get. And so every minute that I could spend immersed in that, I think was a huge influence on coming into the art world. So when I entered the art world formally as an exhibiting artist, it wasn't like that was completely brand new. I want to make sure that people know that I did immerse myself in that world quite a lot beforehand. And I was totally the kid in like grade 7 that made friendship bracelets and sold them for 50 cents. So the whole jewelry business thing wasn't that far off either. And I'm learning more and more that if you kind of go to your inner child or some of these tendencies, they somehow, I find, when you're being really true to yourself, or at least now that I am in this kind of ecosystem of art, science, and design, they fit all the right boxes. And like, I could say that I'm really happy doing the work that I'm doing. And it took a while. It was not a career path of like a linear thing. It was definitely like this.
Julia, I love that you didn't say it was linear, also acknowledging the different channels it's taken. But one thing that I think, it doesn't matter if you're in the in the disciplines of art or in design or science, I think what's really interesting about you and what makes you extremely entrepreneurial, and this is where I've taken a lot of time thinking about, what really makes an entrepreneur. It's that, yes, you have the skill sets, both in the creative worlds of, or the artistic worlds, I should say, because they're both creative. But what it is that you package it so that it's sellable. So what I find, you absolutely, every time I talk to you, like, hey, listen to this new client and like this new product I've created. So this will be really good for the audience listening, is that, no matter what discipline you are, can you speak a little bit about how you've gone about packaging your products or services in a way that's, for people to buy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll talk about Pixels and Plans specifically because that is my company, as opposed to kind of like thinking about, the nonprofit stuff. I think one of the things that I learned was the deficit that existed in science communication. And that came to me, some of it was intuitive, but a lot of it was just looking at the need and kind of the market that was around me and identifying kind of gaps, and also realizing that it was really important to be very clear about the offering. And I think what separates Pixels and Plans from like just a regular marketing agency or an advertising firm in terms of the services is that, like, having been a public servant, I understand what limits there are for my clients. And that empathy, I think, is so huge, because I'm not going to come in there and suggest things that are just not reasonable, or that there's no, no ability to actually execute. And then the biggest one is longevity, and thinking, well, how will this NGO or this branch of government, how will they use this tool? How will it age? How will this product, if it's something that is going to be ongoing, or is there an opportunity to make it such that it is something that will benefit not just in that moment, but maybe have some long-term impact there as well? And those are just, I think, they're little simple things, but they make a lot of sense in having that empathy for my clients, and having that understanding. And so the packaging really for us is that, like myself and my partner, Owen, who's our senior developer on the team, and anyone else we've ever brought onto the team to work on various projects, most of us have a science background as well as a creative background. And that's kind of the difference. When I look at a client project, I have the know-how to look at the rigor of the material, not just provide pure creative direction. So that's a big one. And then another one is I have a really good understanding of the audience, and so and also the people that will be helping working on that project. So that's kind of one avenue, is identifying the needs. And I noticed too, while I had a short foray into having a tech company actually before I formed Pixels and Plans. And so this, I think, is the biggest answer to this question, which is that while I was in an accelerator with a tech company, and I realized that I actually didn't want to go down that path, part of that was being asked by various fellow startups to help them with their kind of science communication stuff. And so it was really, really kind of an enriching experience hearing people's needs about, well, we have this tool we are developing, it's someone's PhD project, or it's this R&D, and then saying, well, is there any way you could help us, because we're talking to business folks, how do we make all of our important science and our product, more valuable, or we're designing this, can you help with that? And so there was some approach in that, and I realized I think I'd rather go into the consulting space and help kind of on the ground than be on the side where I'm designing. And so that was a big one. And then the final one, which is, I think, really huge and important, and I'm a big advocate of this, is mentorship. I've had incredible mentors in my life that have just been so wonderful in opening doors and opportunities and believing in me, and even reaching out, doing cold emails to someone. What's really important is that you're just really clear about what you're doing, and you do the work. I think that's a big part of it. But for sure, those are kind of the avenues. Looking around, identifying kind of, well, where's your niche, and then if you have mentorship, or finding people that are already doing what you're doing, and seeing if there's any synergy there to help them, or in building those relationships. That's such a huge part of it. But a huge bigger part of it is also then doing the actual work, right? That's at the end of the day, I kind of see it like this in Startup Land, and I remember this, and I think that may be valuable for some folks here. I saw a big push towards marketing and letting the world know that you have a product, even if you don't have a product yet. And I'm actually against that, because I think when you really nail it, it has to work both ways, where you have to have something decent, a good MVP or something there that you can actually show off. Because if you market yourself and people come for it and it's not ready, you're going to lose them, right? And I see that similar thing where, you can really market and get yourself out and get your name out, but you have to have a quality product behind that. And so I think that, to me, I've always treated those as equal things. I'm going to read Peter. Hi, Peter. Peter's one of my mentors. He's one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. He's amazing.
I'm just going to read out what Peter wrote. As someone who has brought one of your presentations at Canadian Knowledge Mobilization Forum in Toronto, Sick Kids, you were a pleasure to work with. You really tried to understand who would be seeing the material. Awesome experience. It's really nice to have Peter with us and to hear this feedback. For those of you that know me, I could sit here for the next 10 hours and ask Julia questions. We have two more big questions, and then I want each one of you or whoever to think about questions that you want to ask Julia. Courtney and Chris are incredible right now. At 8 o'clock, we're going to just take in 10 minutes, Courtney, we're going to take a couple minute break, just to, respect the energy and the time that these incredible women are putting in. And then we're going to open it up to you guys to ask questions to Julia. But I know that we really want to talk about two other things. The next question I had for Julia, that I know that people ask a lot, not only from maybe Julia, but from working with other entrepreneurs, is the question of what did it take for you to leave your full-time venture? Because this is a huge decision that a lot of people contemplate making, want to make. They're constantly battling with, I don't like this full-time job. Should I leave it? There's so many things going on. So I think it's really refreshing and enlightening to actually hear the real story behind someone like Julia that did it and what it looks like. So Julia, if you can share your journey, that would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think the very first thing that's like super important to acknowledge in this is the position of privilege that I had in my family unit. And that is that I had a husband at the time who I have not yet pulled for this company, who was working and had his own job. And so when we talked about it, we made the decision together that I could leave my permanent amazing area of work and try some of these kind of ventures that I was thinking about, and that's huge. There is no way that is the same for someone who is holding up a single household or that kind of thing, and I think that's really important to acknowledge before I talk about anything else. So did I have like a cushy backbone of having my financials taken care of as a family unit with my partner? 100%. And so I don't know if I would have had that privilege to even try that. And I just think that's really important to put that out there first. So then with that being said, there are a lot of other things to think about as well, like my own career, and of course, all of the other things that come into play. And so I think the biggest factor for me was just realizing that I wasn't whole, right? As I mentioned before, having all of these different kind of different CVs and different skills. I really wanted to find something where I could be like one person. And I didn't know, like I said, what that would take in terms of finding a job. And so I really thought about, well, what could this look like? And I actually started Art the Science first, which was the nonprofit. And then I thought about doing the accelerator program with a startup, which I then dissolved, and then the consulting company came on that journey. Considerations I had were, I've done some things, and I have an article that I haven't published yet called like, have you lost your career marbles? Try this. And so I've gone down kind of like a personal, I became my own career counselor, I guess. And I've done a number of things to kind of see, well, what does this look like? One of them was just doing some of the personality tests. I thought that was really interesting, like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, and looking at that. And then there's the Ikigai, like the things the world needs, things you can get paid for doing, things you love, things you're good at. And if you find something in all of those, then you should do that thing. And doing some of that work was important in thinking about kind of the career path. And the best one was writing your biography as it would be read, like if you could write anything, and how it would read 10 years from now. That was the hardest exercise in the world. Because at first, when you do it, you're kind of say to yourself, well, that's ridiculous. I would just write like astronaut or actress or like something like football player, whatever, right? Like these superstar things or surgeon, I don't know. And then I realized like, well, okay, well, 10 years is like long enough for me to actually maybe pursue some of these seriously if I wanted them. But when I really thought about it, I did not want to be an actress or an astronaut or a football player. And so it really helped me kind of narrow down, well, what do I want to contribute? Because when you strip down those things, you really think about like, well, what do I want to contribute to the world? Like, and if I can make a difference, is that possible? And who can I enable along the way? Right? Because I think that there's such a huge, mentioning mentorship again, like I have been mentored, and now I'm noticing in this stage of my career, I'm also becoming a mentor for others. And it is such a huge and important thing to also nourish. And so I thought about these kind of things like, well, what if I do this and it's somehow successful? Maybe there are other people that are art and science inclined and design inclined, and maybe they don't want to go down purely academic career path and maybe try science communication. Then maybe this could be something that that would help them realize that they can do that, and it's possible. So that was a big part of it, and I think the rest of it is just having the courage to go in and give your notice, right? Like, I mean, there's like the actual like physical aspect of making that decision and just sticking to it. And so, yeah, I ended up coming in and just saying, okay, I am done. And my mentor there was also incredible and enabled me hugely to do all of the science things. But I realized that I just couldn't only do science things, and that was fine. The best part about all of this was the kind of the check or the validation, I suppose, in pursuing this. And I can tell you exactly when this occurred because this moment is so vivid in my mind. I was sitting at Public Health Agency of Canada because I was working on a project with them. Ironically enough, it was actually some communication strategy for a pandemic preparedness plan, but for the flu. And not for COVID, but while working on that project, I remember sitting at a big round table where lots of people came that are science professionals, medical officers that were thinking about, the document they were working on. And what was really cool is we all had little signs as they put signs and refreshments and all that in a time where you could go and meet people. And so I went to Ottawa and I had a sign, and I still have it. Like I have it here in my office because it says my name. And it says Pixels and Plans, and it says information designer. And the most amazing thing for me was that I was working on that project because I obviously had a public health background, but I also do communication strategy in the space. And so it was a good fit because I knew exactly the audience and knew exactly this landscape. And I had this moment, I don't know if you guys have these moments where I like stepped outside of myself for that like few minutes. And there I was like walking around and I like didn't die, which is I think how normally you picture these like out of body experiences. But I was looking at myself and I thought, oh, how cool is that? I knew in that moment that I would be so unhappy if I was one of the scientists in the room. And I knew exactly that if I was that person and I kept with that trajectory, maybe leading to something like that, that if I saw an information designer come in, there would be a part of me, like the other half, that would just be so sad that that wasn't me. And because I was on the other side of it, it was that like pure validation moment. And I've had many of them since then, but that was the first one where I thought, this is so the right choice, because both the scientific part of me and the creative part of me really does need to come together here to make this work. So I had that aha moment. I was like, yes, this is good. This is the right thing. So yeah, I don't know if other folks have had those moments when they're trying to do things and when you feel like things align, but that was a big one for me. So, I mean, it's never going to be easy. I think the biggest thing that I could say is learning to trust yourself. I made this decision because I trusted that I would be okay. I didn't burn any bridges. So I think that was a big part of it is trusting yourself and following through and knowing that if it's not the right path, you'll also know, and hopefully it will lead you to another right path. I kind of have always had that attitude towards life where like, I if I shouldn't be doing this, somehow I will figure it out. So I think that, yeah, it was definitely not easy, but once everything started falling over to the other side of the scale, like I had momentum and yeah, it worked out.
Julia, you are 100% an inspiration, and I've just been so lucky. The more I get to know Julia, it's, she talks about all her process and the things she's doing, but I can honestly say from an outsider is that Julia does not give up. If something's not working, she troubleshoots until it works. And I think that's, as an entrepreneur, it's like you're always solving problems. They're never stopping. So we're going to it's 8 o'clock on the dot now. We're going to stop for 8 o'clock till 8:05 exactly. And then we're going to continue. We're just going to respect the energies that's been put out right now. Thank you, Courtney and Chris. We're going to take a 5-minute break and get your questions ready because we're going to open up to you. When we come back, though, we are going to talk about Julia's work in the non-for-profit world, and then we'll continue with your questions. So again, thank you guys for being here. This is really, really special, and it's really awesome, even though we can't be all together in one room. So Julia, I wanted to talk to you because I know people have even come to me asking about your involvement in the non-for-profit world. So first of all, can you share a little bit what your involvement looks like in the non-for-profit world, and specifically what are some of the highlights working in this space?
Definitely. So, I mean, the very first involvement I had was joining a nonprofit board. The first board I joined was actually, we have a bouldering, I rock climb, and we have a bouldering club here in Kingston. And so I was on the board for that. And that's what I learned about attending board meetings and how that was structured. Yeah, and that was a really cool experience learning about that sector through a passion of mine, such as climbing. And then with that experience, I later joined the board of a local artist-run center here in town called Modern Fuel. And so I was on the board there for a while, and that was obviously a lot more formal and different than being on the bouldering cooperative board. And so having done 2 years there, it was a total of 5 years on the board. And so it was kind of fascinating to have the experience of how like my volunteerism could help propel an organization. So with that, it kind of, I guess, in my back pocket, I, did my science stuff and kind of worked on things that I was working on in research and art. And then I saw a really huge gap for science art specifically in Canada. And at the time, I remember there's a huge, amazing organization called Science Gallery that came out of the UK. And I saw that they had some funding and they were expanding internationally. And I was wondering, like, I waited to see, okay, are they going to come to Canada? Because if they have like a branch of science art in Canada, great, I'll just figure out how to be involved and support. But they didn't do that. They chose the closest, I guess, was Detroit. And then they have something in Australia. And I'll let you go down the Science Gallery path. But so for me, I kind of had this idea, well, if that doesn't exist, I mean, if I make it, it could exist. And so that was the motivation and inspiration. And I kind of asked myself at first, okay, can I actually do this? Can I start a nonprofit? What is this going to look like? And is that possible? So I partnered with a friend of mine, Alex Pedersen, who now works at Queen's. And so kind of pitched this to her and was like, hey, I have this idea. Are you up for it? Are you game? Do you think you want to be involved? And she said, yeah, I would love to do that. I think that's really awesome. And so together, her and I founded Art to Science in 2015. And so everything that Art to Science has ever accomplished has been volunteer based. And I can highlight a couple of those things. I actually think I have some slides I can change my background to. And
just
kind of
jumping in, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
There has been some requests behind the scenes. Some people are asking, they really want to see, and this is perfect timing. People want to see your work because I think when we talk about it and the idea of data visualization, like what does that look like? So that would be great if you can show stuff. And I was just going to share your data, Art the Science website right in the chat while you do that.
Yeah, I can paste some links at the end too. But yeah, so I mean, if we go back to, I guess, my work as an information designer, I can showcase some of that if I put on like this video, for instance. So this is like a Pixels and Plans demo reel. So anything from like interactive data, stuff like, in that, or creative data-based art projects, like these ones that have been exhibited in art galleries but are purely data-based. And then like we also do some like fun projection type stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens. This is an Art to Science thing actually behind me right now, and this is Art to Science as well. So yeah, so there's been kind of a mix of things, but it's gallery space, maker spaces. So yeah, I'm trying to like get out of the way so you guys can see. So I can talk a little. Yeah.
Sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but what would be awesome, can you give one example of one of the slides behind you? Can you give an example, just speak on what the client ask was and how you delivered?
Yeah, definitely. So maybe like I'll put this up, which is like a portfolio of work, some of it. So I can talk about something like, maybe I can talk about the IDRC project, which is the International Development Research Council of Canada. They're like above my head right there. So that specific project, I was the one that did that one, and not like a dev team. And that was a suite of infographics and a social media campaign and everything around maternal and child health through in Africa for mobile and e-health. So, I mean, that's on the site that people can explore it, but creating like a suite of infographics and a comm strategy, given some of the milestones and the key messages and things that they had about the project. And then, I mean, another one that Owen and I were involved in is the one that looks super weird, like the little incubator thing going on here with the beige background. That's actually a friend of mine who runs a startup company. I suppose they're not so startup anymore, but they have a process in how they harvest one of their products. And they wanted a very like animated, sciencey kind of thing on their website. And so Owen and I designed and developed that for them. So, you know, those are two examples of that. And then circling back to kind of, I guess, the nonprofit world and talking about art science, I can go over kind of the three things that we do, and talk a little bit about the team stuff, because I think that's also key. So the first thing that we do, and I'm so excited because we're working on a research paper on this that we're going to put out really soon, is we had a residency program, which is super immersed. So what that looks like is you take an artist and you put them immersed every day, 9 to 5 for a couple of weeks, into a science lab. And like they live and breathe science, they get to know all of it. And then the second part of that, the phase 2 of that residency, is that outside of academic walls in a local area, you do an art exhibition on what the artist made from their experience in the lab. And then the third part of that is publishing that work and exploring that digitally. And I'll put all of those links up afterwards. So that's kind of the foundation of Art the Science. Now, we also have like a huge online publication, which is our Art the Science blog. We have over like 300 articles. And this is publishing all of, globally around sci-art. And one thing we're actually doing right now on Twitter, which is amazing, is because February is a Black History Month. For every week, we have a person who identifies as a person of color host our Twitter account. And so we've had some amazing science artists and medical illustrators. So there's, I believe, 4, one for each week of February, and maybe we'll continue that. And the idea really is just to give them our platform and our followers, and have them hopefully uplift their own practice. So that's really amazing, that they were willing to collaborate with us and make use of our platform. So I'm super thankful for that. And so that's happening on Twitter. And then, so there's kind of like, there's a lot of stuff going on. The key to nonprofits, though, that I think would be relevant to folks here, which I think is super important, is they can provide a way for you to formalize and professionalize a skill set. And so like the culture of Art the Science is, we've had many volunteers come through the door. Some of the people on the board have been around for a long time. And my whole philosophy on this, when I started this, was that if you're coming in and you're volunteering your time, you have to work on something that elevates your own career. Like, I want to be on the phone giving you a reference for the amazing stuff you have done. And so Art the Science, benefits from your involvement, but you benefit from being there. And that has to be mutualistic. Like, there's no more of, pointing at someone and asking them if they're okay to be the treasurer and them nodding yes, but that doesn't align with anything they're up to. I think that the treasurer should be maybe a student from accounting that wants to brush up their skills like that. It shouldn't be somebody put into that role. It should be really complementary. And that is so huge for me, to have that kind of culture, because if you come into Art the Science, the first thing is, well, what do you want to work on? What do you want to grow? Do you want to learn about evaluation, about event planning, about design? Like, how do you want to contribute? Curation, writing. We have like all of our blog editor and all the writers are volunteers, but they have they have a need and a want for developing a writing portfolio. So if you want to practice something, or if you're not on the entrepreneurial side, or even if you are, there are ways for you to hone skill sets by coming to a nonprofit that you believe in and saying, hey, you know what? I don't have this. I'm willing to learn it if you give me the platform to learn it. And I think that, I'm definitely speaking for the science, but I'm sure there are others that would be open to that. And then I also sit, of course, on the board for the Data Visualization Society, and that's I came in fairly early on. I'm not one of the founders, but I came in early enough to kind of think about the bylaws and the structure, and that experience has been amazing because within 2 years we're at 17,000 members globally, which is just, I still sometimes, we had our formal AGM. Yeah. And I'm super excited. I love the people there. It's been an amazing experience for me to be a part of that. And again, for me then, as somebody who's a board and, maybe not a founder, where, for me being as a founder of Art the Science, there's a strong desire to open up like the wizard curtain of science to artists, and then pass on all of that amazing collaboration to the public. And that's why I started that non-for-profit. In this case, I just strongly believe in the data visualization practice. And I think that there could be an amazing global movement in empowering data visualization practitioners. And so, the stuff that I get involved in, complements stuff that I already know. And I strongly believe in the cause, and the networking has also been incredible. So that's kind of the nonprofit side of it. But yeah, it's, if you're going to start one or you're thinking about it, definitely reach out to folks that have done that or are on boards, or make sure you sit on one somewhere, because it gives you so much experience.
Awesome, Julia. This is, like I said, I have a million questions, but we're going to open it up to this forum, how I want to do it, just to respect people that are accessing, whether it's the captions or the interpreter. Just write your question in the chat. I'll read it out loud. But I think I haven't seen people. Oh, Bobby just sent me a message. Please ask a question. If it's privately, you can send it to me privately, and I can anonymously ask the question, or I can keep asking questions. When you're asking a question, I'm going to ask Julia, I'm going to put it on you, something we're going to just pull away from this. Right now, we're living in a very weird time. The thing about I don't know how many conferences you lost out on. And it's really interesting, because I think we've all heard, or, sick of the word unprecedented times or pivoting and all those languages, like, yes. But what are some of the things that you've learned? Because like what I find is that the quicker you adapt, the more opportunities that have come your way. So you've had to lose out on a lot of conferences that would be a huge place to connect and to build relationships with. How have you done this? And moving forward, how are you, what have you taken away from not being in a live setting? And, what are the challenges that you've had to overcome? And you're still doing amazing. You're still getting incredible clients, and you're still networking a lot. So what is it during this time? How have you been able to be successful in still building these relationships, which you talk about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think to start off, it's important to acknowledge that I'm in a sector that maybe hasn't been as affected as, say, if I owned a restaurant. Like, I think it's a bit different, right? In terms of, design and working with healthcare and that kind of stuff. Like, it's still relevant, and there's still a need. Something that has been interesting is, of course, as even evidenced by this meeting, everything moved virtually, right? And so the conferences that I had booked, I mean, some of the things we had going on for sure were just outright canceled. And that was really, really disappointing. We had some really fun things coming up with a couple of partners, and we were excited about it. But at the same time, new doors opened. For instance, I put a lot of my kind of interactive material in my teaching online, and developed different methods of how these experiences could still be exciting and interactive, and where people get to participate. So I think a huge thing was just to be adaptable and to be open to this. I think if we kind of said, well, I don't want to teach on Zoom anymore, or I don't want to do a panel, like we had a workshop that was going to be physical at a conference. And then, myself and my panelists decided, you know what, we're going to just, instead of doing this in physical format, this is how we can potentially do it virtually. And we delivered it, and it was fine, and it worked. I mean, it wasn't without it being a learning experience, and we iterated, and then it became, it evolved and became better. But for us, it was really staying open to the digital platform, because I mean, for me, in terms of marketing my services, I just go and share what I know. Like I go to a conference where I think my clients were at, and I always try to speak and offer something. So I mean, even I know Peter is on here, and he had this incredible conference that has been going on for a while, and I think I attended 4 years in a row. It's such an amazing network of people. But I always offered something like a free workshop, something in depth that gave back to the community, but also showed what I know. And so, clients would come from that. They would say, hey, that was really awesome what you shared, but can we hire you to come and share it with the rest of our team? And so, yeah, my approach to, I guess, it being in this time, it was similar. It was, well, what kind of online things can I be involved in where I can still share and offer value? And I think that I've just been such a big proponent of that. I think one of the things I would say in terms of finding clients through conferences in general, being online or in person, is that I go to conferences, like there are very few that I go to where it's people doing what I do. I try to go to conferences where it's people that are not doing what I'm doing, so I can offer them my services. And so, like, I'm not going to go to like a conference where, with the exception, I suppose, of a conference like Peter's or a couple of other ones that I know, where I just love the network and the people that I work with. I'll go to a science conference, say I want science clients, then I will pick something and say, okay, well, I'm going to show up and I'll teach them what I do. And then that's my way of promoting it. But I think it's a very, like, to me, it's a mutualistic relationship. Like, I don't want to just send a pamphlet that offers the promise of something. I just want to show them what it could be. And that seems to have worked for me. But in this pandemic time, I think embracing digital has been the biggest thing, really. And not just like being okay with, all of the different platforms, but like embracing it. Like saying, okay, well, if we're going to be on Zoom, then how can we like make this better? Can we use like Google Slides? Can we pop up a Google Excel sheet and have everybody anonymously, put like, I mean, we can even do that now. If people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I can put my LinkedIn there, but if, or we can run an open Google sheet and put all of our stuff there and support each other. Like, so that's been, I think, really amazing. And something else, again, on a positive, optimistic side of this that I've noticed is I have been doing meetups and things online. Some of them have been creative ones. And what was really interesting to me is to notice that there are some folks that wouldn't go to physical meetups because of, mental health or physical barriers. And so they've mentioned that actually this has been beneficial in terms of them networking and having abilities to partake and socialize in this setting, because normally they wouldn't actually leave their house necessarily. And so this allows them to leave their house when the whole world is there. Yeah. So I think I've answered, I'm trying to like, did I answer your question? Yeah. I mean, it hasn't been easy, but I can't say that it's been hard, but all of it was just being adaptable. Like, you just can't say, well, I'm not doing this because the whole world is doing it.
I agree. Julie, this is awesome. And I feel like we're going to squeeze one last question in. We have Morgan is with us tonight. Morgan, hello. There she
Hi.
is. Oh, awesome. Morgan, I've had the pleasure of working with Morgan. She's, it's really neat. Morgan's an entrepreneur. She's doing her PhD, and she's also in a very managerial position. So she's also a leadership for other women in the spaces that she's working in. So it's really cool. I really am excited to connect the two of you. But Morgan had asked the question, As a fellow scientist and tech entrepreneur, I want to ask for any insight to bring creativity to an industry that might be traditionally not receptive. I've been struggling with the balance between bringing my uniqueness, thank you, Morgan, for your shout out, and also matching the demographic for my potential customers in which I am underrepresented, parentheses, young female in a male dominated space, close parentheses. And she's hoping we have exactly 5 minutes left on the clock for this session. So Julia, try and answer this in 4 minutes and then I'll wrap it up. Thanks, Morgan. This is awesome. Great question.
And I mean, I think the biggest thing is, what is the need of your clients with science, right? Because certain science sectors already are invested in having a public connection. Like if you're an engineer doing research on experimental farms on farmland, you're going to go to town halls and you're going to have that communication. But maybe you're in the mining industry. That might be a little harder because a lot of that communication isn't necessarily convincing the public of product. It's very internal. So it's knowing your industry. And I don't know, you didn't mention what industry you're in. But I think to answer your question kind of more broadly, there's a lot of research in user experience, user design, perception design, in terms of just like focus on the function, right? If they're not embracing something, and you have like actual logical research-based, like functional ways of dispelling that usually tends to work. And I'll give you a specific concrete example of that. For instance, there's a lot of folks that come to me and say, well, our advisor has these, templates for posters, and this is what we're using. Like, there's no way, we're always going to justify text and do all of these terrible graphic design atrocities because this is how we've done it and we're not changing, right? But oftentimes if you say, well, it doesn't work, or it should be better, or everyone's moving on, that's not good enough. So, but if you actually show them and say, but this competes with messaging, this is obstructive, this is not accessible, this doesn't meet those criteria, generally that tends to land a little bit better, because one is a matter of taste, which is like talking about the look of something. And that could be like, you like chocolate ice cream and I like strawberry, and we're never going to come together on that. But if it's not on a functional cone and we can't eat it, that's not up for taste. That's actually like a thing that's not working, right? So really focusing on the things that are non-negotiable, that are not working. Like it's really important, because like even with our clients, I'm not gonna, if they want a color palette that I don't like, it doesn't matter. This isn't about me. But if they come to me with a color palette that a color deficient person can't see, then we have a problem. And it's not about me. It can never be about you. It's not what you think about what they're doing. It's how research or, like how people are already using this, and is there a functional barrier? And it's really focusing on the functional barrier that you can then help your clients overcome that. And it's about enabling them and transforming them into whatever that they can then become with your product or your service. How will that transformation occur? They're here now, identify the gaps, and then help transform them. But don't come from a place of, I know better, especially in that field, because it just won't land well. But in a place of, let me teach you something you don't know that's really awesome, that might go a little bit better. Hopefully that helps. Again, I don't know the industry that you're specifically in. If I did, it would probably be a little bit more custom, but.
Awesome.
And I'm so sorry, I spoke really fast.
You know what? It's funny. We're chasing time tonight, but this is a great opportunity for us learning. I'm full disclosure. I'm learning. I've learned so much about working with the closed captions, working with Courtney, and making sure this is all working. So I apologize in advance if there was, a little sticky beginning. But thank you for being so patient. If you want, connect with Julia on LinkedIn. She's just put the link in there.
Are you going to do the book?
I was getting there. Yeah. So actually, what we're going to do is, if you follow Feist, we're going to be doing, I'm putting all your names into a bowl or a hat or whatever, and I'm going to pull one out. And tonight, sorry, not tonight, tomorrow I will do it. I will pull a name out, and the winner from tonight is going to receive a book by the choice of Julia that she's going to recommend to you, and you will be sent a book. We love books, don't we, Julia?
Yes. Love books. I'm sorry to blow the book cover. I was worried that we ran out of time, and I'm like, no, I want to share this book. Okay, so the book that I want to share that I think will be really awesome for those people that are interested in getting to know data visualization. I'll just turn off my background and show you. So this is a book called Dear Data by Georgia and Stephanie. And what they've done is they've sent each other like human-based, data experiences that they've captured throughout the weeks and postcards to each other, and they've documented this whole experience. And the reason why I'm recommending it is because I think it's really an interesting and human way to look at data if you're thinking about data.
Julie, I love you, but we're going to respect the time here of everyone. You're going to find out. Thank you for all being here. Chris, you're amazing for doing the captions. Courtney, thank you for interpreting. Thank you for all joining in. And I will see you for the next Spice Night, but follow our newsletter and you'll get updates on our events that we'll be releasing. So have a great evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Julia, for being such a rock star in our life.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Good night, everyone. Spread your awesome.
Night.